Greetings everyone and happy new year. It is time for me to do my December wrap up. So all of the books that I read in the month of December, which I'm actually surprised was quite a few. Usually in December I get a bit slumpy, but apparently I read quite a few, probably because I listen to a lot of audiobooks as they are my fave. So let's just jump straight into the video and I'll go through all of the books that I read. First up, we have How to Catch a Queen by Alyssa Cole, which I gave 2.5 stars out of 5. This is actually a spin-off series, or the start of a spin-off series from her Reluctant Royal series, and I was really looking forward to this. This is one of my most anticipated books of last year. As you can tell by my 2.5 stars, it didn't quite live up to the excitement that I had. So this story is based around one of the, I think the characters, we met them in the original series with Naya and that weird Prince of Lichtenberg or whatever he's from. But this couple is kind of a marriage of convenience or I guess kind of forced marriage. So this prince, or this king of this kingdom, he needs a bride. It's kind of arranged by this meddling advisor, and so she, the woman who he's matched up with, she just wants to be queen. She doesn't care where, she just wants to be a queen because that's her life's ambition. So that's how this couple comes together. However, I found them to be a little bit lackluster. They didn't do enough communicating, and I think for me, I've come to the realization that I don't mind miscommunication in romance books, but when people just don't communicate, I personally don't really enjoy reading about it. And there was a lot going on in terms of the political maneuvering within the castle, but a lot of it wasn't really all that believable. The king had such a lack of backbone, and I get it because of certain people who had molded him in certain ways, but I just didn't really enjoy reading about this person with such a lack of backbone. This couple who didn't really ever talk or do anything together. I don't know, but I am looking forward to the second book in the series, which is based off of this really kooky character that we met. So I will carry on reading the series because I did like the original series. So maybe this is just a misstep because I didn't actually enjoy the first book in the Reluctant Royal series as well. So I think maybe it's a theme. Now I have Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. I gave this 4/4.5. I actually have a review up for this book already, so you can click and you can check that review out. So I'm not going to repeat myself too much, but overall I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It is basically set in 1862 and it's got kind of this grimy London vibe, grimy Oliver Twist vibe, but make it feminism. And you have these group of thieves who are going after this big con, and it's essentially to con this young heiress out of her fortune. And so a young woman is hired to become her lady's maid, and then things go from there. It's a book you don't need to know too much about when you go into it, and it messes with your mind a lot, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a reread, a book I read I want to say 14 or 13 years ago. It was a long time ago, and it's just as good as I remember. Unfortunately, because I've seen 2 of the adaptations, one of which is The Handmaiden, which I highly recommend you checking out, I knew what to kind of expect from it, but it is a book that you get the most enjoyment out of not knowing anything about. So do check that out and check out my review. Next, I have Ring Shout by PJ Clark. Now, when I finished reading this, I wasn't sure what I felt. I knew that people really like this, and I was recommended the audiobook. And once I finished, I wasn't too sure how I felt about it, but I let it marinate, and I realized I did really enjoy myself reading this book. This is set in the 1920s in America, and it's an alternate history fantasy book. So it kind of is set during this time, think the Jim Crow era in American history. And I want to say it's set in Georgia. I might be making that up, but I feel like it might be. But we have this group of friends who are able to, you're able to see these things called Ku Kluxes. So it's kind of this take on the KKK. And I have to say, some of my favourite bits were when the Ku Kluxes were getting stabbed to death. Loved it. The reason why I enjoyed myself so thoroughly with this is because I think the author, what he does really well is alternate history, because I've already read the Jin stories that he's done, which was like an alternate steampunk Cairo, and fantastic this series of books if you haven't checked those out already. But I think he does this really well. He writes action so superbly. It really leaves you on the edge of your seat, the way he writes his action scenes. But this book is particularly enjoyable because it's sort of this take on Black history and utilizing it in a way that isn't often done, because we get the same Arthurian sort of fantasy time and time again, and it's so lovely to actually read something that is just twisted on its head. So he imbues a lot of history of the Gullah Geechee people, who I'd never heard about before this book, and I googled it. Fascinating. There's just a lot of Black history woven into this story, and it's done so fantastically with so much flavor. Like, this is a spicy fantasy, and I'm going to read the next installment. I think it was touted as a standalone, but the way it ended, I 100% think that it's going to be a series, and it's also been picked up for a TV show, which I cannot wait to watch. I think this was just a superb take on alternate history, and yeah, I cannot wait for more. Now I have The Light Brigade by Kameron Hurley. I gave this one 3.5 stars out of 5. It is a military sci-fi, very heavy on the military. This one is based around, I would say, the distant future, and Earth, as usual, is at war with somebody. This time Earth is at war with Mars, and so obviously in order to get to Mars, we need a quick way because it's very far. So the soldiers are broken down and shot to Mars as light, because obviously, you know, the speed of light is like well fast. So when the soldiers come back together, they're not always the same. And that's basically the premise of the book. It's another story that you don't really need to know too much about going into, because it kind of goes very left from that point. And I think because it is, when you get into the story, it's not a book you kind of expect. And that's why I liked it. If it didn't have that aspect to it, I probably would have rated it a little bit lower, just because it was so bleak. I like grimdark. I don't mind these kinds of stories, but I think the way it was told was almost exhausting to read. And I mean, the author doesn't shy away from talking about the atrocities of war, and I think that's a lot of what this book is pointing towards. However, the discussions around like capitalism, it's a very anti-capitalist book. And the fighting and the war and what was going on in the book, I think, was enough to portray that, or what, you know, it was enough for what the book was trying to portray. But there were parts where the main character would have these monologues and soliloquies about capitalism, and it was just really heavy-handedly done. I just don't think it was necessary. I think if this sounds like it might be of interest to you, give it a go. It's not a book I would personally reread again, but I still found it a different and somewhat interesting read, which is why I gave it 3.5 stars. Lastly, I have the Ice Planet Barbarians book, which is book 1 in the Ice Planet Barbarians series by Ruby Dixon. This is a reread. I read pretty much most of the books in the main series last year. It got me through 2020. I regret not a single thing. But this was interesting to read the second time round. Still 2 stars out of 5. Really truthfully, my favourite things about this series is the world building. I think that for a sci-fi alien romance series, I really like the way that the author sets up the world, and there's just so many possibilities, even for fan fiction, for those of you who like writing those things. These books and this whole series is really just a good time. They're not going to wow you with their literary merit. They're just a good old-fashioned alien loving weird old time, and I enjoy reading them. They make me laugh, they're funny. This first book, however, is very, very heavy. So trigger warnings for like rape and abduction and all of those things. I think this is the only book where it gets that heavy, but then after that they get a lot more light. They get a lot lighter. I'm probably going to continue on with my reread. I'm going to skip book 2 because I don't like that couple, and that's the best thing about rereads. You know which ones you like and don't like, and it doesn't matter if you skip because you've already read it. So I'm going to continue on with that. I love this series. I might even do a video about why you should read it. Who knows? We will see. But if you've read it, let me know, we can discuss. So folks, those are all of the books that I read in the month of December. Do let me know below what your thoughts are. If you've read them, if you haven't, if you're interested, feel free to let me know. But that is it from me. If you enjoyed that video, then please feel free to give the like button some love. And if you would like to see more videos, then you are more than welcome to subscribe. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye.